everyone. Before I just get into that seat, I just wanted to sort of uh, establish my amazing noisy panel. Okay, just a little note that I had prepared because this is something that I'm doing which is not, I'm doing out of my comfort zone, so hence I'm going to read just a preliminary note that I had prepared. At its core, design has always been about people, and yet today I'm equal parts intrigued and amused as we find ourselves revisiting the very foundation of design, the human experience. From Indus Valley civilization to the Eames chair to Kohler's Numi 2.0 smart toilet to our iPhones, design has always had a clear function: to serve human needs. As technology surged ahead, we all bit the bullet, or if I may say so, our apples. In the world where environments shape experiences and well-being, human-centric design is what should shape places, the very place that then shape people. So from homes to workspace, from iPhone to your coffee mug, everything we navigate in between, how we design affect how we live, work, and connect. Today, as we discuss human-centric design, we're going into the minds of India's leading designers and architects who I've been very fortunate to work with all of you at different instances. I want to understand what goes on in their mind and to understand the push and pull between keeping people at the center of design and leading the human behavior within the spaces that we inhabit. Today we have, Tanya has done a beautiful introduction, but we have Iram Sultan from Sultan Design Studio, Vivek Gupta of Arvind Vivek and Associates, Alfaz Miller of ABM, and Anand Asinkar, Head India Design Studio, Kohler. And thank you, my dear guest. I am your moderator, Mrudul Pathak Kundu, and we'll get started. So, what are the first things that comes to top of your mind when we say human-centric design? Who wants to go first? We will keep this short because as we go along, we'll delve deeper into a little subjects. But the first thing that crops your mind.
What drops into my mind is people. People, human beings. We're designing for human beings, apparently. Everything that we do, whether it's architecture, interior, product design, space design, town planning, urban design, landscape, is for people. So it's people first. It's people first. And you have to recognize their issues, their aspirations, their social connect, their connect with the communities. And so people are at the core of the design.
Two things I will just say, shorten it to architecture, essentially, design and architecture. Architecture is supposed to be a social art. So it's always about people, it's not about yourself. And the other is design. What is design? So design is basically about shifting your existing condition to a preferred one. And how do you do that? Because you're dealing with people. So every time it's people-centric, and I would differentiate between people-centric and human-centric. Right now, people-centric design for me.
Iram?
I have a shorter answer.
No, we have
very
lots of
simple.
time.
It's one word. It's joy. I think design, because people by definition, the one thing that everybody wants is joy. Our definition could vary, but joy is the heart of any good design.
Absolutely. And Anand, what are your thoughts?
I always get fascinated when I discuss with architects with the fact that, why do we define bedroom, hall, kitchen as a definition? Because if you're really designing human-centric spaces, then you'll have to understand how relationships evolve. What's happening to people in the family. We were talking about a big family earlier, now it's families, and now it's the relationship within those families. So the spaces have to be a response to that relationship. And I think that's what I call more human-centric.
Right, so taking off from home, Iram, I want to ask this you straight on because your spaces radiate happiness, right? So what is your secret in achieving that delicate balance between comfort, aesthetics, and ergonomics?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me on this panel with these amazing people.
I think you can just hold it closer.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Ashti is also looking at me like, speak closer. Okay. I said, thank you for having me on this panel with these incredible people. For me, it's very simple. I'm taking off from, I think, the macro principles defined by Alfaz or Vivek or Anand, which is that design is, of course, human-centric. That's the basic. But then what is the next aspiration? For me, it's all emotional design. I think what you want is a sense of belonging, a sense of intimacy, a sense of comfort, and it's really not that hard if your process includes the first step of empathy. I think my clients are people whose shoes I would like to wear and walk in. I'm very clear that I'm not building a home for me, I'm not designing a space for me. I want it to be about them, I want it to feel like it's there. So when you walk in, that joy is actually coming from that bond, that journey, that relationship that I've had with a client, where I've built a home. It's not a space, it's not about anything but the people who live there. And I hope the joy is actually coming from them, part of the journey that I've taken with them.
Oh, that's beautiful. I will come back to you, Iram, on materials centric questions, but I want to touch upon a little bit of architecture as well. So coming to you, Vivek, would you say that urban spaces today are human-centric, or are they providing the tailored solutions for today's societal challenges?
Society is ever evolving, so as architects we need to be constantly upgrading our game also. If you realize that things and definitions have changed in the past, I think the earliest memory of inclusivity in design that I would remember is to have, for visually challenged people, the traction trail that you used to have. After that, as public spaces have evolved where inclusivity is the main factor, there is a thing about creating barrier-free movement in public spaces. The latest I can jump the gun and talk about is, which is the trend now, which needs to be included even in our country because we have certain new legislations which are, so the gender-neutral toilets for public spaces, for instance. That's a new thing. I can just for sure think of people cringing if you have to go to a ladies' toilet if you are another gender. And so I think this is extremely important, where architects need to be all the time upping their game to be inclusive, to be empathetic, to be designing democratically for just about all kind of people. So that is, of course, the game that is to be played now.
Right. So just now in the morning, I was just having a discussion with Shriti, and we were just trying to understand a design, say for example, a mall, right from the drive-in to people who are using, to even the support staff, or even each and every little areas are sometimes, I see the lack of them. And I wanted to understand how is it that something so basic, like even just a place for the support staff to sit in the washrooms, is missing. And they're, always. So I just wanted to understand, these basics are sometimes being missed. I would want you also to,
I have some stories to tell on this because we are involved with one of the most iconic properties in India. It's a hotel. And we started redesigning it from the back office, from the back of house.
Right.
And, when I enter the hotel, I see the gleaming staff, well dressed.
Correct.
Welcoming me, the chauffeurs, the bellboys, the concierge, the receptionist. But when you go back, it's pathetic.
The back end.
The back end of most of our projects is pathetic. I think it starts with the pressure on real estate. You want to maximize the bang for your buck in terms of saleable space, bang for your buck on your room rates, and that part of it is just left behind. So that's quite pathetic, and and it hits operations. It finally hits bottom line. When people are not happy working there, things will fall apart. So that's my thing. So we need to emphasize. I mean, you come to a situation where you're planning any project, where you're planning a hotel, or you're planning an office, or you're planning a development. The space which is allocated for services, human backup, is abysmally low, not given enough attention to. So that needs to change. I mean, the regulation may say something, but the fact is not there at all.
So Vivek, can you tell me how have we, sort of not...
I think sometimes, it's oversimplified. It's just provision of, something which is against the behavior of the people is also very difficult. I remember back in the day when the malls came about, that was the first articulated public space for people to go to, which was outside of their comfort zone. But that comfort zone, and all of us would remember, I remember people hesitating to climb on an escalator because they had never climbed on an escalator. So just the fact that or a turnstile, people do not even know how to use a turnstile, So you always see that struggle of people trying to get out of a turnstile which only turns one way. So this is also the human psychology needs to be factored in. We cannot just get them the facilities which they are not comfortable with. At the same time, human behavior is about adapting. So if you give them the facilities, they would start, and this is also an architect's only way of giving to the have-nots, if I may call them that, who do not have the facility of finding ergonomics in their own homes, who do not even have a nice chair to sit on, to come to a public space and get exposed to good design. A bus shelter, a nicely designed bench, an air-conditioned environment, a nice lift and everything is their first exposure. And especially in our country, where people and human-centric design or designing for people will mean giving them facilities which today they may not be used to, but subsequently, yes, of course. Another example could be the Western WC in all the malls. The people were never used to that, but slowly when they get exposure, they adapt to whatever is given to them. So I think design changes people's behavior as well.
Right. So I still want to have a question with you. Vivek, you work across large scales, and I wanted to understand how do you modulate the spatial experiences and negotiate between a collective experience as well as entire individual space, because it's all have to be factored in one design. So how do you find a solution which covers entire demographics?
So like Alfaz was talking about, it's a backward integration, it's a backward design for me. There's a demography that you need to understand when we do large urban spaces, when we do SEZs, where there's going to be, you have to understand the traffic flow first. You start from the first intersection where there could be a bottleneck. You start looking at that, what are the entries and exits to that. Within half an hour, sometimes you have 4,000 to 5,000 cars that will need to enter a basement. You can provide a very large basement because you have a factor of ECS, you have provided that correctly. But the issue is, can the road outside take those people inside, in given time? So I think public spaces start from not just it's also the support system outside. Then when you enter your areas, of course, parking is one of the biggest challenges today, not just for large office spaces, but even for a city. Transport system, so last mile connectivity. If I'm going to be planning a thing, I'm also going to be looking at, is it well connected? Is there an alternate means of transport? We will also look at creating convivial and safe public spaces. So when we do IT Park or a SEZ or something like that, we suddenly realize, my practice is pretty old, so the things have changed in this country. I think in 2000, early 2000, 24/7 offices came into picture. And suddenly the spaces need to be well lit. They needed to be safe. They needed to be secure. And at the same time, they needed to be convivial. Today the biggest example is why BKC, or for that matter in Delhi, you'll find the DLF Cyber Hub has come about, is because people are not just satisfied with going to a CBD which gets deserted after the offices are shut. They want to party after that, they want to grab a beer after that, they don't need to go home after that. So the appending spaces which have come are very important. I think this is what has happened to involve people and make people-centric design.
Right. In fact, I wanted to cite an example, pleasant one rather. I happened to take a metro due to the insane traffic, and just when you exit metro and you're about to get out of the gate, you have that ticket that you have, and it is that fraction of 3 seconds where you want to crumble it and throw or put it in your bag, but there are these beautiful bins right just when you want to throw it, like people who want to litter, it's right there, and everybody who I was watching them was literally putting it inside the bin, and I had a little faith restored. I said, yes, we are heading towards the right direction.
Is that we have a lot of people. We have a problem of plenty.
Correct.
And that's a problem of plenty people. Lots of people. I mean, before coming to this venue, I was timing myself that I don't want to get stuck in traffic and be on time for this show. 2 nights ago when it started raining from Shivaji Park where we work, Anna and Brinda got into a car to go to a play in NAMCC. It took them 2.5 hours
Holy.
and they got there at the interval time. Now what are we doing with our spaces here? I mean, it's not just space, it's a whole infrastructure. I think we have just lost the plot. Why is there so much space outside the old railway station in Mumbai? And when you go to the newly developed suburbs, you just got it wrong.
Yeah.
With the multitudes of people traveling the train, they are crushed. And even when they get out, they are crushed. So, I mean, we are responsible. We are all responsible for the state of things there.
I agree. I want to steer back to the home a little bit because I want to chat with Iram and Anand. Iram, I wanted to ask you, so as now everyone, as we evolve, the needs of the space also is changing fairly quite rapidly. So how do you account for a change in a design space? How do you factor in the human-centeredness when you are doing a space?
I think every project is unique because, like I said, for me, my first collaborative instance is my client. My client is my muse, my client is my collaborator, and that's where it all begins, right? So every project and its requirements are unique. There has been a shift overall in design requirements post-COVID, but it's not limited only to residential. Even in public spaces, while there was a whole notion of security, of course, sanitization, security, well-being, there was also a very large human-centric need for community. That need for community is very evident in all spaces, but perhaps not in homes. Homes are people where they come back. You have a smaller, tighter circle which comes into your homes. Community, that sense of communication, community is in public spaces. Homes changed in terms of their requirement of a sense of warmth. That grew more and more. Every person that we work with, every homeowner that we work with, what they really enjoy is finding their voice. And they discover their voice and we discover it in that entire working time with them, in that journey with them. It's very enriching because it helps all of us think differently. I am thinking for somebody else, so I am able to step out of my own little silo, my own echo chamber, and they will respond to you so that the end result is never uniform. And I think that's the beauty of design. When you're designing for different people, you want that uniqueness to permeate through your work.
Right. Absolutely. Anand, according to me, vital part of creating human-centric spaces is human-centric design. And you work in a design department. I wanted to understand what is it that you keep in mind when designing?
So I believe a little bit that a micro level innovation in products can also influence macro level interior and architecture at the same time. And it's something that we follow in Kohler as well, where we tend to look at the products. The display outside is also talking about the products. But the fact is that as design team and as a design leader, the way I project the business is the fact that step back. What are you offering as a space solution? Don't look at showering, don't look at mirrors, or don't look at toilets or any other product. Look at what the whole space is going to do. That's where color, finishes, and multi-dimensional aspect of products comes in. And you can respond to that as a space as well.
Right. So then that comes, I'm going to come back to you, Iram. And material plays a very important role, and we saw lots of known materials and materials that everybody are fairly familiar with, but I wanted a complete inside opinion. How does a material play a role when it comes to human-centric feeling, the touch and feel of it? How do you navigate that in specifically to your homes?
Again, like I said, everything is unique, but there are two perspectives to this. Materials cannot exist in isolation. So let's say that Vivek or Alfaz are the architects of a building that we are working on. There is a language that the architect creates that we would ideally like to respect and bring into our internal spaces. Very simply because then the experience of the client, which is what all of us want, is cohesive. You know, there is no clash, there is a sense of harmony. That's the first. Second is, what is the client going to be comfortable with? What are their definitions? For example, we worked on a home recently in a condominium in Gurgaon called Camellias. It's a wonderful condominium, gated community. They were nervous about moving from a bungalow into this apartment. They are both bibliophiles. So they wanted an apartment which reflected everything that their home, which was a bungalow, had. A sense of space, a sense of openness, yet they wanted to be enclosed in this space. It was a simple design solution. It wasn't complicated. I think wood is something that I really respond to and I enjoy working with. It worked with the bookshelves that we created right from the start of their home. It had a sense of warmth. It lights beautifully. But every thought behind the choice of material was keeping the client requirement in mind. I sound like a broken record, but I think that's the only way it works, that there is an emotional experience, and that is derivative, and that begins at the start of everything with a sense of empathy, collaboration, inclusivity across the board.
Speaking
I
of
think,
inclusivity, okay, you
I
start.
just, in the sense that I was just talking about what Anand does is immediately gratifying, As a product design, you hold it. It's a touch and feel thing, It's immediately gratifying.
Vivek, can you just hold it?
So I'm just saying, Anand's work as a product designer is immediately gratifying.
Right.
What Iram does, more than what she's talking about, in the sense it brings joy to her client. In architecture, when you're designing urban spaces, you are designing civic structures, it's your responsibility to collectively take care of people. You will never get a direct kind of a referendum on whether you've succeeded or no, but you learn from your mistakes, and that is one of the most important things, that when you're designing for people, you're constantly learning, because people's needs and emotions also change. In public spaces, we've now started designing for neurodiversities, which earlier we were, because people are out and about now, in office spaces, when we design workspaces.
Fairly spaces are transitioning.
We are looking at autistic people coming. They have their own corners because they are neurodiverse people. We need to look at them also. So it's not that you will immediately, but you are also design is not always human-centric directly. You design for the environment. There is an indirect impact which will come on people. Why are there activists who are trying to save jungles, forests, and the climate change and everything? There are the warriors who are indirectly designing lifestyle, designing things, designing an activity around saving the planet, which will eventually about humans.
I have to be honest, I wanted to include this angle, but I said, that needs a separate topic altogether on the sustainable practices, and it can anyhow. But so coming to public spaces, Alfaz, you part of the designing the airports. I wanted to understand that those spaces are used by different kinds of people, and how is it that you find a solution and what are the challenges that you face?
You're designing for a client, but you don't know the end user.
Yeah.
So that's the big difference. So you have to generalize to a certain extent. You have to take care of the small details, and in some of the projects that we design, people have traveled long distances, are tired, and
Correct.
they have special needs. There are people with special needs, and so each project, for example, in the airports, we're designing some transit hotels.
Right.
There are no windows. We shut the windows in the hotels because the guy wants to just shut eye for 3 hours and sleep.
Right.
And his requirements are different compared to a normal hotel room, for example. So you have to recognize what you're designing, for whom you're designing, for the duration of time you're designing. And
So I wanted to understand what and how much research goes into, studying this, especially for public spaces, because here you are when it comes to homes, you're having direct interaction with each and every person or the user. But in public spaces, in large institutions, what goes behind? If both of you can give me a detail.
there's a fair amount of research that goes into
Design
every aspect. No, in design, ergonomics, lighting, mood, everything, including what Anand does. Now we had a very serious discussion. When I was working on T2,
Right.
we had a project manager who was Sri Lankan, Britisher, came here, and we made friends. And he says, Alfaz, can't you design me a gents urinal which doesn't drip?
Wow.
Such a basic need, I mean, so there are so many things in micro detailing that you need to address. And, spaces are getting tight. You do some hotel rooms which are just 60 square foot and a 40 square foot bathroom. So that requires real skill.
Right.
You know,
Iram, I think I see you want to say something.
I'm just saying that the research is actually across the board, and I think there's a macro aspect which is taken care of by people like Alfaz or Vivek, but I think what Anand and I do is micro, which is very detailed as well, just different details, but the responsiveness has to come in at both levels, both macro and micro. It's not that the research will not be there at this level, for example, because like Vivek said, it's an immediate responsiveness. The quality of the textile that we use, what you walk on, what a home smells like, or even offices or public areas. We develop bespoke fragrances for some because,
In fact, your Zydus office was grand and beautiful at the same time. It was one of the most beautiful offices that I had seen back then. How did you achieve that balance of beauty and scale?
I just want to say that I think for us who are her contemporaries, that was one of the finest work that I've seen of, again, reflecting
I think the office,
client. It
the
was
design of
people-centric.
office changed
Yeah,
post that,
yeah,
Iram.
absolutely, yes.
Thank you. That's very kind. And Vivek has always had this great quality. And I must say this, I say this for the fraternity. No, honestly, look, I have friends in the audience. We all are there for each other. And I think that's also been a big thing post-COVID especially, or, we've been together. That I think this is part of the inclusivity that comes into design. Good design of any kind, I need to work with Anand or the products that he has, so does Vivek and Alfaz. There is a responsiveness that comes from both ends, and there's a huge amount of support, and Vivek has been, of course, very
So
important for
taking
me.
off from what he said
But-
about give us a solution for a toilet that does not drip. Anand, you want to, considering you work with that, do you have a solution for us? Or any thoughts on that?
It will not be the right forum to reveal anything that's coming up right now. But yes, I mean, this is where, when we say research, in product design, we literally, we have a UXM lab, which is a lab where you observe people. Obviously, we cannot conduct experiments, especially with bathroom products, in the environment. We use this lab to observe people and see how do they behave. So the research goes to really, really micro level, including the point that you mentioned. And that's something that Kohler believes in as well, where we're saying that do not create the ordinary. Always look at something that's more innovative. But innovative to do what? To solve a problem. And
You have
that's
done
what-
that. You have done that in the US beautifully. You've got home faucets which have that suction, so it uses very little water like an aircraft. You've done it there.
Yeah,
We want it
absolutely.
here.
We've done it in, I mean, thank you for mentioning that, really appreciate that. We've done small innovations as well. So for example, the Weave wash basin, we call it the vessel that is introduced in a way that, you don't see the drain at all because it's nicely hidden behind it. When you lean over it, that's when you start noticing it. And then there are some other products that we're designing as well. If you've seen the Sweda, which inculcates steam into a wash basin, which is it's the first time in the world as well.
taking from what Anand has said, another example for Kohler itself would be people's behavior in various conditions. In US, I mean, you have paper. So you use a toilet paper. It could be environmentally. So whatever Kohler does as an initiative but in India, we have spiritual cleaning. We don't have toilet paper. So it's completely different.
Vivek, that brings me to a point. I had a client who had an office in Switzerland and India and now Dubai. And he was a finicky guy. Bombay's had its share of the bad boys, the naughty boys, I mean, they were brash and they were rich and they were all kinds of people. So we designed an office in Goregaon, I remember, and there was a wash basin counter and Mr. X walks in and he finds water on that wash basin counter. So he says, Alfaz, I think I'll have to send my staff to Switzerland for potty training.
Wow, okay.
So, taking from what you were asking, Alfaz, also, the responsibility on an architect when we are doing public projects is enormous in the sense that, you see, there is no client. When you're doing a public civic structure, when we were doing the assembly building for Leh Ladakh or we were doing the secretariat, I remember within the period of from starting to design to when it finished, I think there were change of 5 or 6 secretaries of the ministry, So every time a new guy came with a new idea, they wanted to interject. The responsibility of an architect, because we were dealing with public, we were not taking a diktat from one bureaucrat. So it was enormous. We always had to be, the design had to be people-centric. We had to design for the people. We're doing a township recently, and this is behavior understanding. The client said, I don't want any buses to enter. So we also were very happy to do a extremely pedestrian kind of a thing. We provided footpaths and everything. But then came the question, what about the school buses that will come? So, learning from that research, outside at the gate, we've provided areas where people could, kids, when the parents come to drop them off, there is a proper shelter for them to sit. They're not standing on the road. That is people-centric design that we all need to take care of to make living easy and better.
In government public spaces, it's not very easy to achieve.
In fact, that's what I was going to ask.
In government spaces, not very. For many years, Brinda has been thinking of at least partly pedestrianizing Kalagoda.
Right.
It's been such an effort.
And
then she got the community together, went and talked to them. The municipal commissioner said, I want to come and speak to these people because there are a lot of lawyers around. They'll file a public interest litigation and just bang it. So, I mean, there are lots of challenges, but there are people, committed people like you who will fight. And
oh my God, I'm such a small spoke
people have
in
to
the
fight.
wheel.
But coming back to the core thing.
So the Kalagoda festival that she did for the weekend, it became a completely pedestrian.
Yeah, but she wanted the inner 3 streets to be pedestrianized around the year. So they've started an experiment with Sunday mornings.
Right.
They talked to residents. They had a meeting in the museum when the commissioner met them and got a feel whether they would accept it.
Right.
And the whole Kalagoda street, right in the middle, it used to be a fun street.
Right.
I think we've lost our, ability to enjoy. There was a fun street, there was street charmers, and they used to have a nice music festival till one guy whose residence was up. It's mainly offices, till today. From that street, you have to go to the Maidan to listen to music. I mean, it's unfair, I think. What's happening around is so bad.
I just want to add to that point that you made right now, and that's something that we also look at design, is the fact that we forget the emotional aspect of design.
Exactly.
We just are so much involved in problem solving the issues that, okay, 1 + 1 is 2. But yeah, that's not the case. You have to respond to emotive requirements.
And we are Indians. We don't build
expressive.
We don't build for 2 years. We build for a lifetime. We build for the next generation. So that responsibility on the designer is huge. You have to take it seriously. That this guy is building a home office for himself, for his family, for his grandchildren. So it has to last out. Design is serious business, and I believe that design should be appropriate, but it should be timeless. You can't go with cliches. Design is not just about materials and products. It's way beyond that. It's more cerebral.
So
that's another. We can keep going on and on about that, but
No,
So-
Iram, I know you want to say something. So
I
tell
was
me.
saying that, of course, I completely agree with Alfaz that, design has to be timeless. But I find that this whole sort of straddling macro and micro is really interesting. And that's where I feel that human-centric design is about collaborative experiences. This is the macro, transfers to micro, micro goes into deeper micro. There is a conversation between all three aspects. And at the end of it, and at the heart of it, is the end consumer who's dealing with every singular part of macro and micro. That is all that design is about. It's a tool for people at various levels.
I think we also need to change, what Alfaz was talking about. We are constantly grappling as certain practices, we have to decide what are we. Are we problem solvers? Are we solution providers? Or are we thought leaders?
Storytellers.
Architecture or design needs to work at all the levels.
With
we
the
need to be
commonality
storyteller. We need to be all of that. So
My colleagues on the dais are from Delhi. Yeah, all three of you are from Delhi.
Okay, noted,
And
point noted. We need
point-
to have
they're from
different-
Delhi. So I worked in Delhi. I recently worked in Delhi as well. And I remember, signing up a contract where they sort of, the chairman shook hands and sent me to one Mr. Mirchandani in the basement to give us our work order. It's called a work order. It's a
Wow.
contract. So Mr. Mirchandani, when is your flight? I said, tonight. He said, no, sir, it will take 2 days to make a design contract. Just then his clerk walked in and told him, what shall I put as Mr. Miller's defects liability period? Defects liability, DLP period is a common word in our contracts lingo, defects liability period. So he says, shut up. Defects liability period is for contractors. You can specify 1 year to it. Mr. Miller's liability to us is for a lifetime.
Amazing.
So that is the seriousness of design. If something fails because of bad design, then he is responsible for a lifetime. And if you take it seriously and design that way, I mean, you're
But
doing
it's all
justice
the
to profession.
beauty of it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
these are relationships. That's what I keep going back to. The emotive aspect of design is when you're designing somebody's home, it's a lot more than room, spaces, furniture. It's a relationship. And that sense of joy that you're talking about, it comes from that. You form these relationships. Vivek has a relationship, and not just the clients, the contractors that we work with. We know people at our sites. We know PMCs. We know other designers that we deal with. We collaborate with furniture designers, with multiple designers, and time is up. I just saw. Sorry.
No, sorry. I just realized time's up. But before I open the forum for audience questions, I just have a question, and it's bothering me with the advent of technology and overload of information. Are we somewhere losing human touch? Since it's something, I know it requires a separate session, but I still want to, till then we'll just wait for audience questions. Iram, can you go for
Well,
this?
I don't even read on Kindle. I read a book. I need that touch. I need that tactility. So I'm the wrong person.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please give them a
Thank
big
you
round
so
of applause.
Thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you, Mrudul. That was very insightful and very interesting.